Hello everyone, and welcome to today's Fridays with Vistage webinar. Before we begin, I would like to go over some items to help you participate in today's webinar. If you are experiencing technical difficulties joining the webinar session, please dial support at 888-259-8414. Again, that is 888-259-8414. When you joined today's webinar, you selected to join either by phone call or computer audio. If for any reason you would like to change your selection, you can do so by accessing your audio pane in your control panel. During the presentation, all participants will be in listen-only mode. At the end of the webinar, our speaker, Tom Young, will be reviewing a few websites for their inbound marketing approaches. If you would like your inbound marketing reviewed by Tom, please submit the website URL you would like to have reviewed in the webinar questions box in the GoToWebinar control panel, and we will select a few to review during the webinar. You will also have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenters by using the questions pane in the control panel. You can enter these text questions at any time during the presentation. Please note that a PDF of today's presentation as well as an assessment tool for your use are available for download on your control panel. A recording of this presentation will be sent to attendees via email within the next week. I would now like to introduce the moderator for today's webinar, Dave Nelson. Welcome, Dave.
Welcome, Vistage members and guests to Fridays with Vistage. I'm Dave Nelson, a 15-year Vistage alum and your webinar host. Today we're talking about how to rise above the digital noise and get high-quality leads. Our guest is Tom Young, the founder and president of Intuitive Websites. Hey, Tom, welcome to Fridays with Vistage.
It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, quick introduction, just so folks know who you are. In addition to his work at Intuitive Websites, Tom is an award-winning 17-year Vistage speaker, which, by the way, means you can get your chair to bring him in for a full half-day session. He is the author of Winning the Website War and a Vistage member based in Denver, Colorado. Tom has worked in the field for 19 years and helped thousands of companies across North America find success with digital marketing. If you've got questions, please type them as we go. We'll try to handle as many as we can. Right where it says questions in the GoToWebinar control panel, you might have to click that little triangle so it points down. And as you heard, we've got a special bonus. If you'd like Tom to evaluate your inbound marketing efforts on the fly today, put in your website address, domain name, URL, whatever you call it, in that same questions box. We'll tackle as many of those as we can at the end of the presentation. So Tom, tell us how to rise above the digital noise.
You bet, and it's a pleasure to be here once again. I love Vistage. I've been a member for about 7 years now, based out of Denver, and have given many presentations around the country. And the goal of this presentation in particular is to get high quality leads, to grow your company, to improve your bottom line and get more sales. And to do that, we're going to be going through some very specific tips and techniques, looking at some resources. I'm also going to be providing training for you today, which is basically sit and learn and take notes. And then we're also going to talk strategically about how to make inbound marketing work for your company. And I want to start off with a graphic from probably the world's leading inbound marketing company, HubSpot. And this is at the core of what we're going to talk about today. Rather than going after a wide audience and hitting and missing so many people trying to find your target market, we're going to talk about the concept of going specifically after an audience of one individual person who is trying to find you, who is attracted to your company, and because of what you do online, they find you and become a lead. This is at the core of the strategy behind what we're doing. And in my travels around the country speaking to Vistage companies, this is still an area of improvement. I think we still have a ways to go to where we have this kind of marketing culture in our company. After today's presentation, you're going to have the tools and tactics and structure to make that work for you. I want to start off with some facts from HubSpot, and this is true of your company as well. If you give attention to inbound marketing, if you have a focus on it, you will see an increase in your revenues. It's an interesting approach because it happens in kind of an invisible medium. You don't interact with these people. You're not seeing them face to face, but in your data, in your stats, and in what you see in, like, for example, in Google Analytics, it will show you your company growth. And in fact, I consider Google Analytics and what we're going to talk about today really a KPI for your company that needs to be looked at on a monthly basis. And as I mentioned a second ago, companies are making an effort at inbound marketing, and we're seeing growth in that, but many companies don't feel like they do it well. So there's some room for growth here. And I want to share with you what I've learned over the last 20 years in doing this. And also, let's cover the objectives for today, because I want you to be very clear on what you're going to get. Doing these techniques, doing these things we're going to talk about will get you more qualified prospects, and it will also improve your digital brand, because what you're going to find in inbound marketing is, this is happening more and more this year, is there's multiple touch points. People will research you through a variety of different sources, but if you're consistent in what we're going to talk about today, your brand overall is improved. This also forces your sales and marketing team to do a better job at what they do. And we're going to talk about how that's important in content marketing. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about how you can develop a team and get the resources together to do this. It's going to feel at times overwhelming, but if you knock it out one step at a time, it can get done. And our outline for the webinar today is these 4 areas. We're gonna break it down into some succinct areas that you can take notes on and go about implementing. Now, I do need to mention that this is part 2 of my webinar presentation. Part 1 is more foundational on your website strategy and what you're doing with your website. This presentation is going much deeper than the website. It's going into the content that you are spreading throughout the internet, whether it be through social media, email marketing, influencer marketing, and so forth. But you can go back to the Vistage website and listen to this foundational webinar, which is part 1. It's also at the core of my book, and it has to do with the 4-step process for website marketing. Okay, so let's jump into inbound marketing, and this goes by inbound marketing goes by different names. Just to give you a quick review on that, some folks call it content marketing. You might even hear the term attraction marketing, but it's the idea of people coming to you. And fundamentally within your company, there needs to be a culture of people are researching to find you, and you want to be in front of those folks. And what's beautiful about most Vistage companies is they have very well-defined niches, and people with strong intent on the internet that are researching need to find your website, and you have to do these things to get in front of them. Some data from Google that supports this. If you want to be found in their research, you have to understand the numbers, and especially in B2B, these numbers are growing. The other area that these numbers are growing on is the use of mobile. And mobile conversions are a little bit different. We're going to talk about that. But this is coming from Google. Of course, Google wants you to use their search engine. They want you to put some ads on Google. But basically, it's very important for you to understand that this is growing and it's going to drive qualified leads for you. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the sales funnel and how Google has changed this, how inbound marketing has changed this. And this is going to be a mindset change for a lot of you folks, especially if you're managing a sales team or if you're a marketing manager and you're trying to get your sales team to produce sales. The idea of prospecting and reaching out to people to drive sales is really in trouble, and every year it becomes more difficult. People know how to block prospecting phone calls, emails, and so forth. They want to do their own research and find you. So this is the old funnel, and this is how it used to work. This is the new funnel, and this is how it works today. Your inbound marketing efforts drives the leads. The leads, in some cases, know more than your sales reps before they even contact you, because the self-service content now is replacing qualifying questions in the sales process. Then what becomes more important now is that when you do have a qualified prospect in your sales funnel, you have to have a targeted presentation for them. And it should be targeted because they've already done the research. It should not be a generic presentation. That should already exist on your website. And then, closing is still the fundamental same thing that's always been in sales. But what becomes more important now is the idea of a stay in touch program. So people that fall out of the funnel, they've got to go into your stay in touch program, into your CRM. You've got to send emails to them and communicate that with them on a regular basis. Keep in mind, They have already researched you, and they're always going to be a more qualified prospect down the road. So in some ways, the internet and inbound marketing has turned this sales funnel on its head. So the idea then that customers are going to find you, what are some tactics and what are some strategies you have to think about? It's really the concept of you becoming an online publisher or thought leader in your market space. And what is amazing about Vistage companies, because they have the niches that are out there, most of you are already thought leaders in your spaces. You just haven't taken that step of translating that thought leadership to content. And I'm going to get into in a little bit how to do that and why those barriers exist. But when you think about strategically about starting to do this, you've got to write in the language of your customer. You have to avoid writing about your company and how great you are and writing more about the value that is needed from your customers. And we're going to talk specifically about how to do that. Also, I want to briefly touch on the concept of digital influencers. And this is something that's really growing now more in 2018 because it's so competitive in inbound marketing spaces. Digital influencers are the people that are influencers in your marketplace, and you know who they are. They could be publications, they could be bloggers, they could be key experts, they could be vendors or partners of yours. These influencers are grabbing online market share. There's no reason why your content can't be in front of them. And in fact, most digital influencers need more content, and they will take valuable content. So if you're going to be doing some selling, this is a good place to sell, is to form relationships with those influencers and get your content in front of them. It's a key tactic for 2018 and becoming more important as search engines and everything gets more competitive. Now, I want to talk about the idea of a content marketing calendar as another form of implementing this idea of you being an online publisher and so forth. Very few companies are preparing content marketing calendars, and they're so critical. This is what holds the team accountable. This is what moves you through the process of content marketing. And this is, the example I'm showing on the screen here is what it would look like for you. And just the idea of having a regular meeting, getting some of these things on the calendar, holding people accountable, this is the tactical thing that has to happen in your content marketing for you to be an online publisher. And the key thing is to find the frequency that works for you and works for your marketplace. And a rule of thumb is if you're in a consumer-based marketplace with a lot of eyeballs on your brand, you're going to do this more often. If you're in a very niche industry with fewer eyeballs, you'll do it less often. You don't want to be irritating with your content, right? But you have to find the frequency that works for you. And you have to be able to put a team together to execute on this content. And this is an interesting slide to show you the skill sets that it takes to make this happen. And the key thing here is the content writer. The content writer is usually the person that's hardest to find. It's usually the person that, if you're looking to do this internally in your company, will hold everything up. So my recommendation for most Vistage companies is to find an outside content writer that can learn your industry and learn your company and can produce the content, email marketing, blog posts, social media posts, and so forth. And here's something that you need to know about content writers. They love to write. They love to write. They love the idea that someone's paying them to write. Most folks in a Vistage company hate to write. It reminds them of school. It reminds them of getting a term paper done, and they're just not going to do it. They'll procrastinate. But like I said, there are lots of writers out there that love to write. And because of the changes we're seeing in, for example, in the print media, there's a lot of writers looking for work. So you can find them at an affordable rate to execute on this strategy. So that's law number one, customers find you, and it really has to be an ingrained strategy in your marketing team. How can you put things onto digital websites and social media sites and so forth that people can research and find you? Law number one.
Now, Tom, I want to jump in with a quick question right now.
Yes.
One thing you mentioned there seems so counterintuitive, at least to like normal practice when I'm looking at people's websites. You said don't write about you, don't write about your company. Can you expand on that a little bit? Because that's what it seems like everyone does.
Right. So it's the concept of brochure copy versus value-added how-to copy, right? It's the concept of taglines that say, we've been in business for many years and we're fantastic, versus a tagline that says, we can show companies that work with us on average 3 times sales growth in a quarter, right? So it's more about the customer or the prospective customer than it is about the company.
Got it. So it's about them and their problems and helping them get to their solutions, not about us.
Right. That's right. And we're going to talk about the concept of taglines and deep content and so forth. It's much easier to talk about how great we are as opposed to talk about the problems that you solve. And it's counterintuitive, you're right, because when you talk about the problems that you solve, you are talking about yourself. But you're talking about yourself in a way that makes sense to the website reader, to the website researcher. And it ties into law number 2, which is the concept of building a loyal following.
Okay.
And this presentation is about how do you get that first-time person to become a prospect? How do you get them to contact you? Then once they contact you, they should continue to follow you and stay in touch. And that's law number 2. And the core of building a loyal following has to do with the digital noise. So think about this for a second. If we're inundated with options and choices and noise, doesn't it make sense that we become loyal to something that really works for us? And we see that online. We see that with brands. We see that with social media sites and websites and everything. Your company can do the same thing. So understand that the current the prospect, the person that's out there now online has a very short attention span. They're inundated with information. And you got to combine that with the fact that it's a self-service world. I mean, we do everything on our own now. And we also believe what we want to believe. We see that in our political environment today. Both sides of the political fence will believe a fact one way or the other. And that applies in your space as well. And it gives you an opportunity to connect with folks that are going to be loyal to your company. People definitely want convenience and they don't want to be sold. Getting back to your question, Dave, when you talk about yourself, I think people feel like they're being sold, right? But when you talk about the value you provide or you improve the quality of their life and help them do their job better, then you're more working toward establishing a relationship and building that loyal following.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So, and I've got a lot of information on these slides. I'm not going to read all these bullet points, but the slides will be available to you. And I have a hard time pulling out bullet points because I want you to read this stuff. And I want you to take a bullet point and share it with your marketing team and say, how can we execute on this? How can we make this happen? But understanding the new prospect, walking in their shoes, getting inside their head is a key to building a loyal following. And then, of course, there's so many digital tactics you can use to engage with people now, which we'll get to in just a second. 2 resources on building a loyal following, which once again, you probably didn't think of, but these are resources about how and why things catch on. And these are folks that did research on the kinds of content that people get excited about and trigger them to action. The first book here is Why Things Catch On. And basically, these are the 6 areas that Jonah talks about. And these are appropriate in all industries. Whether you're a hardcore manufacturing company or whether you're selling services or you're a real estate agent or whatever you're doing, all of this type of content applies to your marketplace. And you should be asking these questions of your writers and your content and your marketing team. Are we writing content that's going to get shared? And here, this is a great resource, is this book. And the second resource is a book called Made to Stick. Similar, they both include stories, but Made to Stick has a little bit of a different twist. Concrete information that's easy to remember. For many Vistage companies, that is critical. Now, I mentioned some of the tactics. So, once we have this loyal following and once they've connected with us, it's so critical that you do these things to stay in touch with your marketplace. Blog posting, and I want to mention too that we all have our preferences, right? And don't do sample size of one marketing. Just because you prefer a blog doesn't mean all your target market will. So it's best to spread your content out among multiple channels. And it's really best to know where your target market is hanging out, what they prefer on the internet. And what we found in the industry doing this for 20 years now is that it's always going to be a mix. It's always going to be a mix, even in certain verticals. And the 3 that have kind of risen to the top now are email newsletters, blog postings, and social media posts. Those are 3 critical pieces of content that all companies need to have. Now, one of the things I'm going to do as we go through the presentation, I'm going to give you some resources. Now, keep in mind that I've been doing this for 20 years, so I've had a chance to filter through 20 years of resources, and there's so much out here. MailChimp is a great resource. It's our preferred provider for email marketing. All Vistage companies should have an email marketing program going out at least monthly with valuable content. If your email marketing has valuable content, people will read it, share it, save it, and contact you. If you send out spam, they'll delete it. So don't send out spam. Send out valuable content. And then have a CRM that can either integrate with your email marketing, or maybe you do email marketing from your CRM, but these are critical for building a loyal following. So we're gonna go to law number 3, but before we do that, let's check in on questions from Dave, if there's anything in that panel you wanna address.
I don't see any questions right now, but folks, if you want to ask questions as we go, please go to the GoToWebinar control panel. You might have to, where it says questions, click the little arrow/triangle so it points down. And if you want us to evaluate your website at the end for effectiveness from an inbound perspective, please put your URL there. I'm queuing some up for you, Tom, in the chat panel, so you'll just be able to click on the URLs there as we go. So let's do law number 3.
Law number 3, and I never said this was simple, and I never said this was easy. So what I'm going to challenge you now is that so far what we've talked about with people researching your company and building a loyal following, all this has to be done in a very simple and straightforward manner. If it gets too complex, then people will be put off and they'll leave. And I want to show an example of probably the most powerful online brand in the universe, right? Google. Could the website be any more simple? Not much, and for the most part, basically you see a graphic or you see Google and you see one box. So this helped Google be what it is today. Now, underneath this very simple looking website, there are millions of pages, not to mention all the websites they've indexed in the search engine itself. But this is an example of the power of simplicity. And the thing about simplicity that I want to share with you is that it takes strategy and courage. That's why I want to say that it's not easy. It's not easy to do. If it was easy, everyone would do this. But if you get it right and you can focus on those key messages, maybe no more than 3 key messages on the homepage of your website, then you will get more conversions and you will have people going deeper into your content. And I like to start with the idea of the 10 out of 10 rule. And this is something that should apply to your online marketing. 10 out of 10 people that experience your digital brand should know what your company does, should understand the value you bring, and then have a desire then to dig deeper into your content and make contact with you. Simplicity is the key to making that happen. And more ideas on this is the idea that use concrete words. We talked about not talking about yourself as much, talk about the value you provide. Think about a tagline for your website that's 12 words or less, and then those 12 words, 10 out of 10 people can read that, understand the value that you bring, and then decide to go read a few blog posts, decide to subscribe to your email newsletter, or best yet, decide to contact a salesperson at your company. Simplicity drives this, and a key resource for simplicity is user testing. And this is the idea of talking to your customers, getting feedback from your customers on what is of value to them. In fact, a great question to ask your customers would be, if you were to give us 2 or 3 key value points about our company, what would they be? And if you can get people on your website and have them review your website, that's awesome. But here's the key: don't ask them what they think about the website, because they're going to say the website's fine if you ask them what they think. But ask them to do something on your website. Ask them to research something. Ask them to dig deeper into your service or products. Ask them to review your blog posts to get information to answer a question. That's the kind of feedback you want on simplicity. And an excellent resource is Steve Krug's book, Don't Make Me Think. Okay, let's keep moving. We're going to go to law number 4. So, and on top of all the things we've talked about, your content has to be mobile ready, and mobile continues to grow. It surpassed the 50% usage for websites. In B2B, it's approaching 50% usage. We get this data from Google, but we also see it because we monitor about 150 websites in Google Analytics, and we can see the data ourselves. We have enough sites we can see the trend. and it's just amazing to see the growth in mobile. The challenge for the excellent inbound marketing company is to find a way to convert mobile users. And hopefully this presentation will give you the strategies to do that, because the mobile experience is really no different from the desktop experience when they get to understanding and getting the resources they need. But the conversion points in mobile seem to be more challenging for people. So my feedback to you is to make it easy for people to convert on mobile, just like you would on desktop. And you could, once again, user testing will help you through that. The growth of mobile has to do with the idea of people being so impatient, wanting it right away. They're inundated with so much information that they want to be able to pick up their phone and get to what they want. For 2018, there is a massive trend through voice search. All the major digital companies now are allowing you to search with voice. And I do get asked often, well, how do we optimize for voice search? And how do we do SEO for voice search? And the answer to that is to do the fundamentals of SEO. The fundamentals of SEO work for voice search as well. And we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. I don't know if the providers of voice search even know how their devices work, or their software that they've set up. So my fallback is to really have excellent SEO, and then you'll show up in voice search. And a key resource for you is the concept of responsive design templates, especially if you're building in WordPress, that can adapt to mobile. The cost on these templates is so much less than it would have been to hand code these sites. We build our websites in WordPress. I highly recommend that you have your content-based websites in WordPress. It's just a fantastic resource. And then make sure that your conversion points and your forms are also optimized for mobile as well. So those are the 4 new laws. That's a very foundational aspect of inbound marketing, and really something that has to be the culture of your marketing team and the culture of your sales team. Within that is the concept of content marketing and how you use content within those rules. We're going to dive into these 10 rules. And before we do that, I'll check and see if there's any questions that need to be answered.
Yeah, there's a good question here coming from Adam. He's saying, how do you determine the most effective frequency for outbound marketing, or maybe the specific channels, emails, blog posts, etc.? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it would depend on your industry. It would depend on how many users you have and how many folks are looking at your digital content. My thought would be that if you're rolling this out for the first time, you want to see blog posts once every week or two, and you want to see an email newsletter at least monthly, and you want to see social media posts, maybe once to twice a week minimum. But the beauty of all this is that you can see all the stats. You can see all the data through Google Analytics and through the stats in social media. As your numbers grow and as you start to see what catches on, you'll quickly realize that in some cases you can accelerate what you're doing and you'll get more eyeballs. So the answer to the question is, have a weekly meeting to review the data with the key people on the team and monitor what's working and what's not, and build on that. It's a process. There's never an end game to it. It's an ongoing process.
Yeah, you are now permanently and forever in the content creation business. The only warning that I'll give to people I'll throw out there as a longtime podcaster is be careful about going out at too much of a sprint if it really is a lifelong marathon. Creating content on day one, everybody has something to say, but when you try to do it consistently over time, it gets hard. And so, spread the load and pick a frequency you can sustain.
Yeah, it's such a great point. And there seem to be people in your company and folks that you might be able to contract with that have a creative mind for content ideas. They're more conceptual in their thinking. And these are folks that it's great to brainstorm with them, and you might be able to get dozens of content ideas for them, and then those ideas then get plugged into the calendar.
Yeah, in Adam's case, by the way, he says that they do consulting services and they have about 1,000 subscribers. So would you pick a specific frequency there, say on an email marketing campaign?
I think the numbers I gave are fairly appropriate for that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's look at the 10 rules of content marketing. And thanks, folks, for keeping the questions coming. And we got a bunch of websites here teed up to do at the end.
We do, and I'm just gonna jump through these slides fairly quickly. Like I said, we can send you the slides. You can read through these. One I want to leave you with on this slide, which is such a key point we don't think about. Your content marketing and your inbound marketing efforts, they last forever. Think about that for a second. They last forever. And in fact, the content marketing builds upon itself. So as you do more blog posts, as you do more email marketing and all these things, that content improves your results over time. So you'll, because of the power of Google and how Google works and how people search and research, a blog post you wrote 6 months ago or a year ago may start to get traction in Google and pop up for keywords, and boom, there it is. So because of that, the ROI is fantastic on content marketing. And so these 10 rules are critical, and they can do awesome things for your business. So let's go through these. And some of these we've touched on already, but I want you to have these, and it should be a checklist that you can mark off with your team. Write for the reader, not your company. It's interesting that that's the first rule. And a great resource for this is Writer's Access. Now, there's several sites like Writer's Access, but you can go here to find freelance writers that can write on any topic. And in fact, Writer's Access has different scales and different budgets depending on the type of writer you need. If you need an engineer, you can find that. If you need a consumer-based writer, you can find that type of writer as well. But write for the reader, not for your company. Make that a mission for your company. And then I want to just touch on the concept of using this content to get found in Google. Now, Google still maintains a 70-80% market share of searches. In what we see in website marketing, it's not uncommon for Google to provide more than half of the traffic to the websites we manage. So Google is a major player in digital marketing, although their influence has dropped because of social media and because of other resources and because of people using websites to get information as opposed to Google, doing searches in Google. For example, Amazon is now 10 times more popular than Google for product searches. And of course, people don't go to Google to search for Facebook, right? They're on Facebook if they like social media. But the thing you want to do in Google is set up the Google Search Console and be active in it. This is the one thing that's missing from a lot of Vistage companies. It's the concept of the communication that you're actually getting with the Google spiders as they index your website. This Search Console is absolutely critical to SEO, and I think it's a KPI for your company. You should be reviewing this data at least monthly, or have someone on your team that knows how to review this data and interpret it for you. It also tells Google that you're not a spam website, that you are a legitimate website. It's the only place you can go to see the actual queries that are done in Google that display your website. I want to repeat that again. It's the only place on the internet you can go to see the searches that are done to find you. So it's an absolutely critical tool. If you're going to do content marketing and you want to measure the success, this is where you will see it first. This data will start to improve even before the leads start to come in. And Google reports that this is accurate, that if you want more visibility, you've got to write more content. And the question I get asked is, how in the world are we going to do this? How are we going to get to 500 pages? We've got 15 right now. Well, you start today. And you start today with one blog post that's going to go out next week, and you make it a culture in your company. When you get to 50 pages, your traffic will start to increase. And 2 or 3 years from now, you'll come back and say, Tom, we instituted this. We get 4 or 5 leads a month. We close about 2 or 3 of those leads. It significantly helped our sales team and our growth. Rule number 3 and rule number 4, these two kind of go hand in hand. When you roll out this content, someone needs to have oversight to make sure it's consistent and that it becomes a voice for your brand. Not a good idea to have content going in different directions. So there will need to be oversight on this to make sure that that there's consistency in the voice of how you're writing, what you're talking about. And at the core of all this, once again, is translating what you do really well to your content. And in fact, I want you to think about, if you were to make a list of all the benefits that people get from working with you, and you may have to talk to your customers to get this, those benefits become categories for content. And those categories then can become blog posts, email marketing, and so forth. But it's all around translating what you do really well. And most Vistage companies do fantastic things. and most CEOs can tell me what they do in just a few seconds. But when I experience their digital marketing, I don't always grasp that. So the challenge of the rule number 4 is to translate what you do well. the best resource for both of these is your customers. You have to have that dialogue with them, because in many cases, they'll come up with things you haven't even thought of, or your sales team has not thought of. Rule number 5, let's make content a competitive advantage. And this is already happening. Now, another question that I hear from Vistage CEOs is, well, we don't want to give away our secrets. You know, if we give away our secrets, our competitors will take those secrets and run with them. Well, maybe, probably not, is the answer to that. And the response from me is, if you don't, someone else will. You follow me on that. You should not hide value with your content marketing. You should turn your content marketing into competitive advantages and let people know what it is you do and how you do it, and watch how people start inquiring more and wanting you to do that for them. A great resource for this is to make sure you've got regular blog posts on your WordPress website. As I said, you know, at a minimum, do a blog post every month. If you can do a couple a month, or even one a week would be awesome. Make it a competitive advantage. Make content a competitive advantage. Your customers will tell you that you had such great content on your website. We chose you because of that. So we talked a little bit about taglines and taglines on the homepage of your website. One of the things my company does is user testing. We've done hundreds and hundreds of hours of user testing. And when people get on websites and start looking at digital content, they want to see headers and taglines, just like people have for dozens and dozens of years when they read newspapers and magazines. They look at headlines, they look at captions for photos, and that draws them into deeper content. So your website needs to do that as well. You've got to have captions on your photos. You've got to have great headers and taglines throughout all your content. And you have to do what I call communication in layers, right? So you can have these taglines and these headers. Underneath that, you could have an encyclopedia of content on your industry. And Google would love that, by the way. But if you communicate in layers, then the researcher gets their needs met and they're more likely to contact you. A great resource for this is Screaming Frog. You can go to screamingfrog.com. This is a resource that will look at your website and analyze every single page and give you a sense of how your site is set up to communicate and to be found also in Google and SEO. And you can do a free trial, and they have a free version that's fantastic on its own. Okay, 8 and 9. Always use captions with photos and graphics. If you don't, then you're not meeting the 10 out of 10 rule. If you don't have a caption on your photo, then your website user will decide what that photo means. And this is a big issue, because you might be thinking your photo is communicating one thing when in fact it's communicating something very different. A caption will bring that together. And if possible, avoid clip art, avoid stock photography. Take real photos of your company, real photos that tell the story of your company. I'm seeing that more as a trend now with Vistage companies, and I love to see it, and your users will love it too. Number 9 is watch the ROI. And all of the things we've talked about today, you can measure and watch the ROI. And one of the best resources for that is Google Analytics. Google Analytics is a KPI for your company. You need to be seeing this data monthly. If you see changes in this data, it's a leading indicator on what's going to happen to your company. Website traffic going down means you're losing market share. Where's that traffic going? Website traffic increasing should mean that you're going to see a boost in your business. Rule number 10. All of this has to be a culture in your marketing and in your leadership. So to make this change is going to take education. It's going to take hiring folks that understand this and believe in it. And it really comes from the top. A great resource for your marketing team, and it's really the leading resource on content marketing, is the Content Marketing Institute. They have incredible articles and fantastic content resources that they have on content marketing. So if you're going to do this on your own, make sure people get the training. One of the best things to do for this tactically is to schedule a meeting to talk about content marketing. Have the key people in the room, have the data ready, and ask them to show you the return on what's being done. So I'm going to do a couple things here on implementation. I'm going to keep this pretty brief because I want to jump in and look at a few websites, and I want to look at your content. Like I said, I'm going to send the slides to you. There's a lot of information here, but I want you to have a checklist of the different types and channels for content marketing. And what's interesting is if you went out and surveyed your customers, you would find that they're all over the place. They use these things. People have a preference for how they want to consume content. So it may feel overwhelming, but if you can narrow it down to the handful that are most important to your client base, these are the channels to get content distributed. And I also get asked about, how do we come up with topics? How do we figure out what to write about? Well, I'm going to give you this checklist. Within this checklist, there's dozens of blog posts that you can write within each checklist. If nothing else, write one just on a checklist, and you've got a couple dozen right there. But think of your blog as the book of your company, right? The story of your company. If you were going to tell the story of your company and you're going to have a bunch of chapters that you wrote about your business, this is what it would look like. This would be your blog posts. I want to talk about two very important pages on your website that don't get enough attention but are critical to conversion, lead conversion, and are critical to what happens in content marketing, because anybody researching you will more than likely end up on these two pages. And once again, in hundreds of websites we've analyzed, the About Us page consistently shows up as a top 10 page. But for many companies, it's an afterthought. You have a paragraph of content there, very little is said about the company. And so people tend to just go, whatever, and they leave. Why not make the About Us page really cool? Why not have your company history there, your business approach, bios and photos of key team members, information on your clients, case studies, testimonials? These are great content to put on your About Us page, because once somebody gets to this About Us page, they're pretty close to pulling the trigger and contacting you. Let's make this a key part of them doing that. The other page is the Contact Us page. I've seen websites that don't have Contact Us pages, or the Contact Us page is buried in the footer. Once again, this is a top 10 page in most of the sites we look at, and is an absolutely critical conversion page. Most users on your website will go to Contact Us before they become a sales lead and before they sign a contract with you. The key thing for the Contact Us page is to give people options. Do not do sample size of one marketing here. Because you prefer to use one way of contacting someone, keep in mind everyone has their preference. You want to certainly have a web submission form. That web submission form needs to be tracked in Google Analytics as a conversion. And you want to keep in mind that people will sometimes research you after hours. So they need to have options on when they're going to hear back from you. And you know, they need to be able to submit a form. They may not have email on the computer that they're using to research you. This also helps drive conversions in mobile. Okay, we're starting to wrap up now. We're gonna go live on the internet, and I'm gonna show you some tools, and we're gonna look at some websites. I did mention that you're gonna get 20 years of filtering through key inbound marketing tools, and here they are for you. I'm gonna show you a couple of them today. We've talked about them a little bit. Buffer is a fantastic tool we started using for social media posts, because when you start to look at that content calendar, you'll start to realize, man, how can I automate some of this? How can I get away from the manual part of that? Buffer is a great tool for that. So have somebody on your team go in and take a look at each of these tools and look at their websites. Many of these tools are free, or they're significantly inexpensive. I mean, less than $100 a month, less than $50 a month for many of them. All right, so let's do this first. Any questions we should follow up on before we jump on to Google?
I'm just going to answer one that has been posted, but folks feel free to continue to post questions or your website addresses for analysis. And Tom, if you'll scroll in the chat, I've been posting clickable URLs for you, so hopefully this will work between the two of us. If you'll scroll back to about 10:06 a.m., you'll see Alltelligent. And I picked it because it's a B2B service. And a lot of Vistage members are B2B, and sometimes this is just a little bit harder when you are a service as opposed to a product company. So it's Alltelligent with one L. So A-L-T-E-L-I-J-E-N-T.
So it's J?
Yes, A-L-T-E-L-I-J-E-N-T. And you might find just clicking it right in the chat panel will open up the browser for you, but however it works. There we go. I think that's them. So let's jump there. And so let me answer the one question that came in. People were looking for the handout. If you go to the GoToWebinar control panel, you'll see some choices there, and one of them is handouts, and there's a little counter one. If you click the side arrow, it goes down. You'll get a clickable PDF, which will drop this straight to your computer. So go for that.
Excellent, and I like to kind of stumble among about this through Google, just like a user.
I see. You didn't.
Yeah,
I get exactly what you're doing here, Tom. You don't want to go straight to the URL. You want to pretend to be a searcher starting at Google. So I'll give you the company name from now on. So what do you see there?
Well, the first thing was, how do you spell it? And you helped me with that, but this spelling would be a challenge for users. The second thing I see is that Google wants to send me here. And I'm not sure why Google wants to do that. Maybe they have some ads for that brand. But I will say this, what I just did right now is one of the most important branding things you can do for your company. Searching for your company name in Google is branding today. And I'll tell you right now that there are many, many key people that you want to do business with doing this search, and this is what they're seeing. Now, what's interesting about this is you can control a lot more of this than you think. So you can control this right here, which is called the title tag. And right now, there's nothing on the title tag. It was left as a default from the developer. It even says home for homepage. You can also control this, which is your meta description. In this case, it looks like Google is pulling that from the home page, right? You can also somewhat control this. This is something that Google does. Basically, Google is saying these are the pages that most people want to see when they come to this website. So, this is branding for you. I also want to show you a tool that some of you may not know about. If you do site:, if you can see one up my screen here, .com, and hopefully I've spelt everything right. So what I just did is I asked Google to show me all the pages that have been indexed by Google for this website. And you can see it says about 24 results. And the reason it's approximation is because Google will index pages that don't exist any longer. And the key thing there is that if you have a page that doesn't exist on your website anymore, you need to have what's called a 301 redirect, directing people to the new page, the page that replaced that. Otherwise, Google doesn't like that, and they might penalize you for search because they don't want websites without active pages showing up in their directory, right? But this tells me that we've got a ways to go, right? We've got 24 pages indexed. We really want to have 500 pages, especially for a consulting firm that is focused on information. Most consulting firms are focused on information. So let's take this site in from a content marketing perspective. And the first thing that a user is going to do on this website is answer the question, what's in it for me? So I'm coming to this website, what's in it for me? What value would I get from this company? So not seeing that, but that doesn't mean that you can't do it. In fact, after today's webinar, you can make a change to this site, use a static image here, and have that image, or have the image be static with the content, and in 12 words, tell me why I'm at the right website. And I also want to just a quick thing about the use of images. Now, these images are pretty cool looking. Do the images connect with the value that your company brings? And in this case, I don't think you're an outdoors company. Maybe you are. But I would want to see an image that relates more to the value I'm going to get, and an image that ties to the tagline. In fact, the best marketing companies online have fantastic images and fantastic taglines that excite users to move forward and read more. So I'm going to look now for the navigation system. There it is. I'm going to go and peruse the blog. So we're doing something with artificial intelligence. I'm going to go to about, and the reason I'm leaving the blog is because I don't get it. I don't understand. Now I'm sure that the site, if you have a customer who comes here, they probably get it. But imagine the first-time prospect, or imagine someone who might refer a customer to you. What would their experience be like? Let's go to about. Okay, now this is great for businesses to improve their overall performance. business to pursue. So that now we're getting at some value here. I have a business. I would like to improve my overall performance. I would, how do you do that? This to me is maybe a services page as opposed to an About Us page. If you come back to the About Us slide that I had, it showed, this is where I want to see the team and so forth. My guess, my guess is that this site might be fairly new. It's a WordPress theme site that may have been launched recently. So what I love about this concept and your company, what I love about your company is what an opportunity for content here, and what an opportunity to reach people in SEO because of the niche. So the timing is really good for you. I hope this webinar was valuable for you. Dave, any thoughts on your end, and then we'll move on to the next website or content.
No, I think you got it right there on that About Us page. That's more about the services provided, and I really want to see a page that also shows pictures of the people. I want that people-to-people connection because, well, people buy from people. Let's do another one, and in this case, I think it'll be a little bit easier. Mark and his team are using a really cool domain name. Of course, we used to all have .com. Mark's domain name is Zeal, as in Z-E-A-L, zeal.technology. So let's see what we can find there.
Okay, so yes, here we go. This is interesting. So Google wants to finish my sentence for me. they want to put words in my mouth, so to speak, here. But here's the thing. Google does this to help searchers, and they also are showing you the most common searches for this combination of this term. And this is great intelligence for you, and it's great research for SEO. In this case, I do use this all the time, and I click on the link. This is something we didn't see in the previous example. This is the Google My Business, which used to be Google Plus, which used to be whatever. Google changes it all the time, but it's basically part of the Google app universe. And you want to see that showing up. In fact, we feel like it's a key part of SEO at this point. So the example before needs to go look and see how they're set up in Google and how their apps are set up. Interesting that we see a couple pages here, and we see zeal.technology. Okay, so that's what you were mentioning with the unique URL. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, before we go further, since you touched on Google My Business, please, folks, if you haven't done that, go to Google, in the search box, type My Business, and they will lead you to the process, which involves mailing you a card and a PIN code, but there's a whole process you can discover to get what Zeal already has here.
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, it not only is important for SEO, so to give you some background on this, Facebook is in trouble right now. We don't know what's going to happen to Facebook. There's been other social media sites that have come and gone. Remember MySpace? So Facebook is in trouble. Google sees an opportunity here. They're not going to let go of this social media thing. They want people using the Google social media app. And I think it's critical for your business, for SEO, for content, and so forth. It's not super time consuming. It is a little bit laborious to get set up, but do keep in mind that your company should have one master Google login. So whatever that master Google login controls all your Google apps. You have to have that put away in a vault somewhere, because that's key intelligence for your company. Don't let an employee set that up and then leave your company with it, which we've seen. Keep in mind that login controls analytics, AdWords, it controls YouTube, it controls so much, and even Google My Business, Google Maps, and so forth. So we're seeing an example of that. But let's click through to the site. And Dave, you made an excellent point, and that's the idea of people. So how do people relate to content? Well, think about it. You want to know who wrote the content that you're reading. Who is this individual? What is their background? Why are they writing this content? The person is more important than the brand when it comes to content. So absolutely, we want to see people, and we want to see those people on the About Us page. You might even see those people on the blog posts. You see a brief bio and a photo. So let's take in this site, first time impressions. Welcome to the future of talent management software. Okay, yeah, that's a pretty good tagline. It started to got me engaged. Talent management software, chatbots and HR software that we create a happy working. Okay, nice. And here's Ava, the employee engagement bot. I like the design. I like the content. It's appealing to me. Okay, so I want to learn more about this. Let me see what I'm going to do to learn more. I'm going to go about us. Would love to see the people once again. So, I'm getting an idea of the culture of this company and what you guys are about, but not getting a sense of who you are or your history and that sort of thing. Maybe that's okay. Let's look at the product. Good stuff. So here's some comments from me. Hopefully everybody else is reading along with me. I would get about us and contact us on the main nav. I think you're okay with 4 navigation points. I think giving people an opportunity to engage with you a little bit more before they pull the trigger and try it for free. I see that as helping the website. Once we do try it for free, let's see what happens. Hopefully I can try this for free fairly anonymously and not feeling like I'm going to be, pursued by a salesperson. I don't see anything on my screen, so I'm going to come back here. Let's say I want to pick up the phone and call this company. There's a telephone number there. Here's the contact us. Okay. And then one more thing we'll look at is the blog. Well, so the blog categories for me should be around how does this app help? So if I have employees that I feel are disengaged, how does the app help? Okay, sounds good. I think this website is a good start. I think a few tweaks that we talked about would really help. So let's do one more really quick here, and then we'll start to wrap up. See if there's any follow-up questions.
Okay, I picked this one because it's a B to B to C. In other words, this company's products go to other businesses and then are sold to consumers. And I see sometimes confusion about who the heck is the target audience. So the company is called Baker Boy. B-A-K-E-R-B-O-Y, Baker Boy.
Baker Boy hat. That's probably not.
Probably not them.
Probably not them. Okay. So bakerboy.com, food service and retail bakery products. Here we go again with, and you can control these photos. You can control what displays here. Here's the title tag. So there was a little bit of a title tag written. This is more of a meta description that rather than a title tag, this description should be down here. This should be full of keywords, right? The keywords that are being used to find your company. Okay, I want a donut.
I knew you'd like this one.
Yep. So if anybody's hungry, this is not the site to be on, but I like this. I like the thumbnails. I like the ability to scroll. This is great for mobile. Let's touch on the about page, which is first up. Introduction, our culture. So yeah, you guys have done more with the about page. I like that. That's really good. I would like to see a blog, and here we do. We see some people. Nice. And I like the history of the company. For me, that's branding. It's great branding. So if you have a blog, I can't find it. Let's add a blog to this site. There's a lot of stories to tell. Anyway, so we're going to wrap up, but before we do that, let me see if Dave, there's any burning questions that we want to answer, and then we'll call it a webinar, and hopefully you all received excellent value.
I think we're going to call it a day. We've got enough candidates here. We could easily go on for the rest of the day, no doubt. But right. Respecting people's time, since we scheduled this an hour, Tom, why don't we bring it to closure?
That sounds good. I'll just say that I'm available to review your site. You can reach out to me at tom@intuitivewebsites.com. We can have a brief conversation, and I'll take a look and help you out as best I can. It's been a pleasure being here. Like I said, I'm a longtime Vistage member, love Vistage, and I sincerely hope that you all have some value and you can go grow your sales and increase your businesses.
All right. Well, thank you, Tom, for a highly informative and thought-provoking hour. And by the way, I am reminded that companies that blog, since that was Tom's last recommendation, according to HubSpot, which Tom mentioned earlier, 55% more web traffic, in part because Google favors newer content over older. All right, well, if you didn't grab the slides there, you will have another chance. Always, you can get the past recording and the slides at vistage.com/webinars. And we're going to be back again in one short week. So that's going to be next Friday, April 13th at the regular time, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. And the topic is going to be, are you focused on making the right decisions as a CEO? And we're going to have Vistage Chief Research Officer Joe Galvin, if you've never met him, and business strategist Mark Emmer. And then we'll be back again in May 11th. In the culture struggle, your first move should be ... You're going to have to join us to figure out what that is. So on behalf of Tom Young and the entire team at Vistage Worldwide, I'm Dave Nelson. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Fridays with Vistage.